Hello, back again this evening with another little review.
Oh, you're doing your live stream.
I'm doing my live stream now, Violet. Yeah, just gonna try and knock this one out a little bit this evening. So we've got the incredible left-handed giant. Always great little can art. This is Mind Control. Indian Pale Ale, 6.5%. Brewed as part of the global gathering initiative set up by our friends at Brew Gooder to help bring clean drinking water to developing countries. That's an interesting little initiative. It's got so many hops in it. Hops: Cryo Simcoe, Cryo Mosaic, Cryo Amarillo, and Nelson Sauvin. What's a cryo hop? Is that like a genetically modified hop? I don't know. I'm not really sure. That's a lot of hops in it. It's 6.5 Indian Pale Ale, brewed by Left-Handed Giant from Bristol. One of the cans that Martin Walker very kindly sent me yesterday. I'm just going to try and adjust that a little bit. And it looks like that. So again, it looks very Nipri, but it is a West Coast pale. Well, it's an Indian Pale Ale, as such. There's debate on what that is, whether that's... I'm going to shut my laptop because I think my laptop's reflected in my glasses instead of just the little light that Kerry's given me. Smells bonkersly good. Very, very juicy, big pale, 6.5. Very refreshing, but very hoppy. Very, 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 very hoppy, as you'd expect by having that amount of different stuff in it. But yeah, somebody tell me what cryo is. Mike from Double Barreled might be able to tell me that. I don't know. Or Andy Parker or Ian Clark. Any of you, any of you brewery people. What's a cryo hop? Why do they put cryo in front of it? Is it like frozen hops? Is that what it is? Hops from other years that have been frozen? That would make sense, I suppose, wouldn't it? Yeah, interesting day today. It's been full of sort of surprises and things happening that I didn't expect. Got a phone call from, as we were talking about the other day, the No Pubs No Rent hashtag, which is happening on Twitter. I got a phone call from a guy called Chris Wright, who works for an organisation that are basically out to help pubs when they're in times of trouble. The Protect Pubs org. I'm really sorry, I should know all these things off by heart, but I tend to do these a bit off the fly. What I have noticed, which I'll go on to in a minute, is how the different pub trade bodies have reacted today. But yeah, Chris used to work in litigation, became involved with pubs, realised that there's this whole sector of people who are just constantly being threatened by people, and people trying to make them redundant and not redundant, trying to make them bankrupt and take bits of stuff off them. So he's gone from litigation over to the pub sector, and he runs this amazing company now where he helps people out. Chris Wright, look him up on Twitter. Very, very good, absolutely top quality bloke. Phoned me this morning, gave me some quite surprising news about our situation with Wellington and how he'd been in conversation with I can see Gareth Epps, you're going to have a proper rant about the BBPA, which is a trade body for the pubs, and yeah, I'm going to have a bit of a rant about them in a bit, but yeah, so Chris contacted me and said you know, we've been in conversation with people overnight about your situation and what's happening within the trade, and we've got a lawyer on side who works for a company in London who's very, very keen to discuss this sort of stuff, as there's been various bits of legislation that have gone through which basically make what's going on at the moment with a lot of pubs illegal. You know, and setting out how the different ways that pub companies are dealing with this. There's almost become a league table overnight of the pub companies that are doing good things and the pub companies that are not doing good things. And obviously there's a lot of pressure on both sides, but you know, people are trying to get these pub companies to come in line, and a lot of them off their own backs or whether via pressure have done that. They, you know, there's an increasing amount of them that are doing good things. There's some that are sort of sitting in the middle and going, well, defer people's rent, which is no help to anybody because nobody will ever make up for that period that they're closed. I think most publicans across the country would be quite happy to pay for their most people who run pubs live above the pub. Okay, we understand the situation commercially, that, you know, we're all quite happy to pay the rent for the buildings we live in. That's not a problem. We can't pay rent on stuff for a business that doesn't exist. That can't happen, whether it's pubs or whatever sort of businesses. You know, the commercial industry at the moment needs to have a little word with itself, really, because if you have no way of making an income, how the hell can you pay rent for something that doesn't exist? That's just, you know. So there's a group of there's two sort of tables of the goodies and the baddies. You know, of people who are doing good and bad things at the moment. Wellington are still sat in the bad side of that, and there's been more traction on that today. People who I've spoken to online have contacted Wellington a lot higher up than the people I talk to, like head of their department, their head of their commercial departments, and being told quite frankly, we do not have a policy for the COVID-19 situation. Well, you know, these are some of the biggest landowners in this country. They own ridiculous amount of property all over, 850 pubs, plus lots and lots of massive developments all around the country. What I didn't know, which I found out today, is they also have, of course, when you're a billionaire, what do? You have a charitable side, which has done, they've got a huge charitable side which has done a lot of really good things, a lot of things to do with hospitals and stuff like that as well. You know, they bought wings of hospitals. Of course, everybody wants their name over, you know, something, you know, I mean, it's the old Jimmy Savile thing, isn't it, buying a few dialysis machines, but they're buying whole bits of hospitals and funding them, which is great. You know, that's a really good thing, and a lot of hospitals do rely on private donors, but what they're doing within the industry doesn't really line up with what they're doing in their charitable sector. So people have been contacting their charity side, but as yet the response from Wellington is, we do not have a strategy for COVID-19. So what that tells you is that they want all their rents paid in full. And by saying you don't have a strategy, what you're doing is there's lots of people over the country who are just panicking because they're dealing with this huge company and they're paying their rent. They're paying their rent because they're scared. And so what they're trying to do is obviously get as much rent as they possibly can during this period. And then when they're finally forced to change things, you know, and own up and, you know, and become part of the wider initiative of what's going on, then they'll go, oh, well, okay, we won't charge rent. But the people who have paid their rent will never get that back, and they won't get a reduction down the line. They're just trying to fill the coffers as quickly as they possibly can by saying we don't have a strategy. That's madness, absolute madness. You know, how can a company, how can two of the second richest people in the country not have a strategy? That just isn't a thing. Isn't a thing. Sorry, our guinea pigs are going bonkers in the corner over here. Anytime you make a noise, they think they're getting fed. So yeah, there's that. That's been going on today. That's been very interesting. Another thing that myself and my friend Graham, who runs a separate business, we've been chatting about the grants that are available. Our council have written to us today and made us aware of what grants we'd already applied, both of us. But it's weird how these grants are working. I'm finding that quite difficult to understand. So, as a business, we obviously we have a rateable value for our business, and then there's a calculation that works out how much you're going to pay based on that rateable value. Now, here's the kicker. So that calculation only. So if you have a rateable value up to 51,000, you are eligible for certain grants. Now, one person I know has a rateable value over 51,000 and pays a huge amount of business rates and is eligible for nothing, or a much smaller amount than we are essentially allowed to claim. I don't know how that works. I suppose what they're saying is you're going to lose. Everybody's been told that we're not paying business rates this year. So in a way, I think what they're saying is, well, people are above 51,000 pay so much business rates that's their help. But just because your pub is in a certain area and your rateable value is higher, how can you not be eligible for any help? That doesn't make any sense to me. You might not have the biggest pub in the world, but where you're situated and stuff like that might have such an impact on you but you're not going to get any help for it. I don't understand how that works. I really don't. That's really blown my mind today. We're obviously really grateful for the grants we're going to get and how that's going to work. And as I've said before, those grants from our take on everything are there to make sure that we can continue to pay our staff and that we can continue to pay our suppliers, and that when we reopen, there is a chance that the pub will reopen. We'll be able to restock the pub, and and away we go, and everything's hunky-dory. We'll never make up for the period that we're closed, but how are some people going to be able to do that without any help? I just don't know. It's not all about us. There's so many other people out there. That's blown my mind today a bit. And as we were talking about earlier, trade bodies and how they've reacted today. Some of them have, they're working really hard and putting out as much information as they can and pressurising pub companies. And then there's the other side of that, the BBPA, which essentially is a trade body for the pub industry. It isn't. It's a trade body for the pub companies, really. They have today. There's I had to write this down because I would forget as soon as I came on. There's a lady called Emma McClarkin, who is the chief executive of the BPPA, who is a trade body apparently working for us. Well, they're not. They are paid by the pub companies in some way or other. And she's come out and said that all grants are there for to make sure that the big pub companies get their money. That's what she's essentially, not to pay staff, not to pay suppliers. She's cut through all of the information that's been given to us by various people in position from Boris down, and their take on it is that essentially the government should give us this money and then we should hand it back to pub companies. Because if you cut through a lot of these pub companies on their boards and stuff like that, there's a lot of MPs that sit on these, or ex-MPs. It's a really good, little earner for a lot of them. They take a non-executive directorship on some of these boards, and, there's a lot of money to be made for these people, and yeah, their trade body, if you like, is the BBPA. Nobody in the trade has any time for them. They are essentially a pressure. They're a lobbying group, pressure group on behalf of the pub companies, really, not on behalf of. They say they work for us, but they don't. They just purely don't. So yeah, it's been an interesting day. Lots of to and froing on different sides, and people making moves and trying to state their claim on different things. I've seen some crazy stuff, like operators who have more than one pub. Most of us have one. Some people have three. People with three being told you're going to get nothing because you already own three pubs. Well, they don't own them; they lease them, like what one single operator does. They're being told if they're going to get help, they'll get it based on one pub, not on all three. They won't get, if they've got three pubs, they won't get 3 times the grant. They'll get one, and they have to make that work. And we don't still know how long we'll be shut for. This. I mean, if I'm honest, most people I talk to are working on a 3-month basis. We don't think we'll be open after a month. We don't think we'll be open after 2. We think it's probably 3. And the grant that is being made available to all of us, we've sort of gone, yeah, it's tight, but we could make that work. There is a way that we could make that work and still operate as a business. Any longer than that, then that grant would not be so helpful. I mean, it's obviously helpful. There are people in the industry who are shutting their pubs, taking the grant and running. So that's another thing to be careful of. But maybe that's, in a way, it's like, their way out. I don't know how anybody would run with the money. You can't rent a house, you can't move out, you can't do anything at the moment. So that makes no sense either. But yeah, I've heard some really worrying news tonight. And when I mention this, I'm really sorry. I'm going to not mention names or anything, but I've heard about a Reading pub which is going to shut, and that's really, really worrying. The people that own it apparently are going out of business, and it's a bit of an old Reading tradition, and I'm really, really gutted if it goes. It's one of those pubs that I love. I love the people involved in it. I've been dealing with for years before we had the pub. When we had the brewery, they were really good to us, and I'd be very, very sad if a certain pub in Reading is shut after this and isn't going to make it out the other side, because there's a lot of people I know who have got a real thing for this pub. It serves its community really, really well. I've always thought it's got one of the funniest landlords in it. And somebody who me and Kerry have dealt with for years and years and years, and has been very helpful to us as pub owners. So I'm really sad to hear that might be the case. Like I say, I'm not going to mention any names because it's kind of, I'm sure a lot of people know anyway or can guess. It's just one of those that it's a bit of a Reading tradition, that place or institution, and I hope it doesn't what I've heard is going to happen doesn't happen to it. And if I don't want to step on any toes by saying that. Beer wise, I've run out of new glasses. I haven't got any more fancy ones than the ones we've already used. So back in the Teku for Mind Control, bonkersly hoppy beer. Very tasty. One of those. Thank you, Martin, for that. That is really good. Really, really good. And at 6.5, about right. You know, 5, 6s I quite like in kegs and cans. That's about right. 6.5, it's lovely. Doesn't taste very boozy. It's just very juicy, very, very, very hoppy. Very. Again, has anybody solved the cryo thing? Going to quickly look through the comments just to see if any of my brewing friends are on here, which it doesn't look like they are. Sorry, what was the Jimmy Sam? Oh, I mean, I did mention him himself. If you can't trade, how can you be a public house? Very well put, Dave Hoptroff. We are not a public house. We are essentially a flat which has an empty premises downstairs of it at the moment. We are not a public house. We therefore should not be charged rent for a business that cannot operate. That's completely our point. Yeah, nobody. John Willits was on here. John, you're a brewer. Let me wave at John quickly. What is a bloody cryo hop?
Well, it's a hop that's been freeze-dried, isn't it?
Well, that's what I'd say, yeah. And that makes sense. Cryo hops are freeze-dried hops. But why would you do that? Why wouldn't you not use fresh stuff?
Well, it might be when it keeps it fresh. I mean, like if you've got a hop that gets delivered, if it's being frozen, it'll be as fresh as the day it was picked, as opposed to like.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. Kerry's making a very good point. I mean, I don't know if everybody on here knows a lot about hops, but you know, back in the day, everybody used to use fresh leaf hopped. They weren't very fresh. They were always from the year before, pretty much, and they come in big bags which are vacuum packed and squeezed together, and you have to break them down and break open the buds, and they're a bit like ganja. They're full of oil in the middle. They're from the same family, so you break them open, and in the middle is this lovely little yellow stem which contains all the bitterness and flavour and you know, all the good things you want to go into a beer. Aroma, it was the other word I was looking for. And then they, you know, during my time as a brewer, which was many years ago, then they started they would break these down and reform them into pellets. I was always really scared of pellets, but mainly because we didn't have the setup to deal with pellets. Pellets in the modern breweries you see now, they have whirlpool coppers where you know, the pellets deliver you incredible rates of bitterness and aroma and stuff, and they can whirlpool them out at the end, and they're much more effective for people. But yeah, the cryo bit, I'm a bit, I don't know. There's lots of other people out there who can probably tell you what a cryo hop is. It makes sense that they're frozen, yeah. But, and I'm going to say, if they are frozen, it doesn't show on this beer at all, because it's a real punch. You know, Simcoe, we talked about some hops that everybody loves. Mosaic, I was talking about last night, it's one of my favourite. Just gives this really floral, lovely to a lot of beers. Simcoe's another one of those. John Willits is still watching, but he's not answering my question. Amarillo, I'm never sure about. That's the one that I wasn't sure. Is Amarillo the one that gives it real grapefruitiness? And then Nelson Sauvin, which I'm always a bit wary of, because is Nelson Sauvin the one that's a bit like that terrible toothpaste hop, which I can't stand. Whose name escapes me now. But yeah, that's delicious.
Sriracha?
Really. Sriracha Ace is the one that I hate, yeah.
That's the sauce.
Yeah, Sriracha Ace is the you know, I'll get stick from a load of people now about Sriracha Ace, because lots of people love it, but I despise it. It's a toothpaste hop. Makes everything too minty and just not very nice. I think it was originally designed for dark beers, and it served the purpose in them. And then everybody started banging them in pails about 4 years ago, and I still avoid it like the plague. It's one of those hops that oh, it might need taken out actually quickly. Just quickly, if you can do that, that'd be great, and I'll come in 1 sec. I'm going to finish this down now anyway. Yeah, just wanted to give you a bit of an update about what we were talking about the other day. Give you a little look at Mind Control, which is delicious. Again, like I said the other day, I'm not very good at these beer reviews. People have always got loads to say about how complex this and that is. I'm not. I'm more of a, I like it or I don't. I remember doing beer tasting for Running Camera Beer Festival, and I'm not the one to do it. I either like it or I don't. That's about as good as my beer reviews go. I've been quite lucky this week. We haven't had any that I didn't like. I mean, you know, that Imperial Stout was really good last night, but it's not something I drink a lot of. The Westmoreland again was very complex and very delicious, but I wouldn't drink a lot of it. I'm quite simple in my taste, really. I like a big punchy 5 to 6% pale that's juicy and delicious. That's what I like anyway. But so yeah, that's it for tonight. I'm just we've got to go and have our dinner ourselves in a minute. Yeah, just some updates on the stuff that's happening. Weird trade bodies doing different things today.
I reckon a couple more minutes.
Oh, we've got a couple of minutes because but I will finish in a second. Yeah, I'm not going to rant on all that. I'm just having a look, seeing who's on. Again, I did that weird thing where I scrolled to the end. Luke, Gemma. Oh, my sister-in-law Gemma's on. My cousin Mob, Russ Gale, Sophie Stone, Jodie Oates is on. Jodie, I've got to give you a shout out. Sorry, I put my hand over the camera. Matt Kinnison sent me a picture of your beer delivery thing today, and how he gets live updates when you're dropping beer off. It's just great work. Great work. He can track you dropping beer off into his own street, which he was very appreciative of. Nick Hames is on. Dave Hoptroff, Ashley Mason. How are your affairs? Dave's asking. I don't have any spare. I'm really sorry. Me and Kerry are basically drinking what gin we have left at the moment. Andy Saxby, Phil Small, Evening Dirks, yeah, hello mate. Sigmund, it's my Sunderland friend, who, by the way, has anybody been watching the Sunderland thing on Netflix? Season 2's out, which I did take the piss out of a little bit last year when they first came on Netflix, and then my friend was on that documentary waving his leg in the air, which was brilliant. I started watching season 2 of that last night. What are you watching? I've run out of stuff, but the other really good thing which I'm really enjoying is the Vladimir Putin thing on Channel 4. Watch that. That's brilliant. About him, the spy master. Bonkers what he got away with and what he gets away with. Very good watch. Give that a look if you're desperate for something to look at. Sorry, I keep covering the camera when I'm scrolling. Richard Gale, Steve Lutchwaite, Anne-Marie McCarthy. Oh, hello, another publican. She's got an amazing hotel down in Surrey. Used to run the Griffin in Caversham. Another one of my pub heroes. He used to help me out so much when we first opened the pub. She's lovely. Andy Parker's on. Andy Parker, what is cryo hops? Crookie. Oh, here we go. Crookie's put, same as T45 pellet. Has less stalk and stem. Pelletized at cryo temps. Well, there you go. I'm sure that makes sense. to some people. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But higher alpha acid, which is bitterness, I think, isn't it? Oh, well, there you go. Andy Parker. Cryo hops are processed at much colder temperatures to better preserve the volatile oils. Well, there you bloody go. This is what knowing people in the industry. Oh, twice as expensive. Of course they are. But twice the punch per kilo. Brilliant. Okay, well, that's interesting. I learnt that tonight. Nelson Sauvin is pretty vegetable-y, I find. Yeah, it's something I'm not a huge fan of that whenever I see that and stuff. But yeah. Anyway, listen, thanks for everyone coming on. I know it hasn't been great. It's just me having a little rant again. I'll try and do a bit more tomorrow and make it, a bit more positive again tomorrow. I just wanted to give you an update on what's going on and stuff. But yeah, thanks for coming on. This is sort of keeping me sane every night doing these. So thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. Brilliant. Cheers. Bye.